Hello. So today we are talking about multi-step inequalities. So building off what we did on Friday, just making it a little bit more because we're actually going to solve for x. So we need to have a general idea of like what solutions are for inequalities and then what it takes to solve for x, but it's really just a build on the past two units. So inequalities, we talked about last Friday of having infinitely, I'm bad at spelling, but infinitely many solutions, okay? Because if you think about x is greater than 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, those are all answers, and it goes anything greater than 5 is an answer. So, therefore, to show, we talked about having to graph them, okay? This whole unit, we're going to have to graph our answers. So, for example, x is greater than 5, remember? That symbol means an open circle on 5. And then you shade greater than, so anything greater than would be to the right, okay? So that was all from Friday. Now when we're solving, when I solve something like this, x is greater than 5, all we're doing is finding the boundary between the solutions and the non-solutions, okay? So what this means is that x is greater than 5. That's going to be my go-to example. 5 is like the boundary between what would count as a solution, what wouldn't. So over here, if we're looking at this, an example of a solution is anything after that boundary. So greater than 5, 6 would be an answer, okay? But 4 is not. So 5 is that separator between what is and what isn't, okay? So this number, though, like for example, 5 is only sometimes an answer or a solution, okay? So looking here, it's actually not here because it has to be bigger than 5. So 5 would not be the solution. It's just a boundary for it, okay? So 6 would work, but 5 wouldn't, where if it was x is greater than or equal to 5, so a closed circle, that's when it is part of the solution, okay? So understanding the difference between that, okay? However, the process of solving these things really is no different than solving equations, okay? It's still, we want to isolate the variable, and then all we do is we then graph it. Okay, so it's very similar to last unit, except for now we actually put it on a graph because it's not just x equals something, it's x is greater than or less than. So just like before, how do I get x by itself? Well, opposite operations here. Get rid of that. So my answer is x is less than -4. Okay. So I put my number line, put -4, put 0 where it would go, and then put some number that would be to the left, so I'm going to put -5. Okay, and then figure out where to shade. So remember, that means open circle, because it's not or equal to. So open circle on -4 is 0 less than -4? No, it's not. So shade away from 0. So you're shading everything to the left. Okay. Same thing, how do I solve for x? Well, this isn't plus or minus, so it's just multiplication. So my opposite operation would be divide by 8 on both sides. 8's cancel out here, so I'm left with x is greater than or equal to -5. Okay, so I put -5 on here, just put something to the left, put 0 where it would go, and then figure out. This means closed, because it has the or equal to. This was open, so just a reminder on those, okay? So closed circle on -5. X is greater than -5. Is 0 greater than -5? It is, so shading away from the less, so shading greater than -5. This is where -5 is included in your answer, because it is or equal to. This one, -4 is strictly the boundary line. All of these are solutions, all of these aren't, okay? And then our last one. I would have to divide by -2. Don't try to add it because it's being multiplied by x. Okay, so divide by -2 over here. Now watch carefully what happens. X is, now it is greater than or equal to -7. Okay, what happened? Sign flipped. Okay, we're going to distinctly talk about when that happens, but look, both of these were negative answers, correct? -5 and -7. this sign flipped, but this did not. The reason is because I divided by a negative. Here I divided by a positive. So if you divide by a positive, it doesn't matter if this comes out negative. It is still the same way. I divided by a negative, so my sign flips. Okay? So put -7. That would be a closed circle. Put 0 where it is. And x is anything greater than or equal to -7. Now you can see if you miss flip or you don't flip, your answer for your graph is going to be completely wrong. Because if I didn't flip, I would have shaded the other way. So you got to be careful. Only flip your sign when you multiply or divide by a negative. Okay? Doesn't matter if your answer is negative. It just matters what you multiply or divide by. Okay? So just moving along. We'll do 2 more, and then we're going to call it quits, if I can scroll. So just reiterating when my sign flips. Okay? Scroll a little bit more. Up. So sign only flips when you multiply or divide both sides by a negative. Okay? It does not matter if the answer is negative. So I don't care what the answer is. I care about what I'm multiplying or dividing by. Okay? So that's key. That is key. Cool? So just solve. I'll let you try to solve them. So pause it. Give it a shot. I would subtract -3 on both sides first. Don't mess with the 2. That's the last thing I messed with. And the 3 was positive, so I'm subtracting it. Okay? So then I'm left with -2x. Keep your sign the same. I didn't do any multiplying or dividing yet. 15 minus 3 is 12. And now look what happens. Divide by -2. Divide by -2. Since I divided by a negative, what happens with my sign? It flips. Okay? So there is my answer. Now for those of you who need to kind of flip things around so that you can graph it, here's what it would look like. Just flip everything again. Okay? Either way, you just got to be careful with how you graph it. So I'm going to put -6 on my line. Put something smaller. Put 0 where it would go. Open circle. And then shade. So here, if we're doing it this way, it's saying -6 is the biggest part of x. So my shading, -6 needs to be the absolute biggest. So if I shade this way, -6 is not the biggest part because I'm shading everything bigger than it. So shade this way. But if you were talking about this, x is just less than everything less than -6. Okay. Last 2 here. Looking at this problem, how do I clear a fraction? Multiply by 6 on both sides. Okay, just a reminder on how to do that. So those are both gone. Okay, so I'm just left with 5x plus 12 is greater than, that would give me 42. Okay, now it's just like a regular algebraic problem. So that would give me 30, because those cancel. I'm left with 5x, and then divide by 5 on both sides. Look, I'm not dividing by a negative, so just leave it as. Sign doesn't flip, and it's just a normal problem. Okay, graphing it, pause it, give it a shot, but this is what you should get. Okay, last one. I'm going to go through this one together because this is important. The -2 distribution again. Okay, that entire -2 is being distributed. So you got to remember it with the 10 as well. So 5 stays for now. -2 times x is -2x. -2 times -10 is actually a +20. Okay? That's the biggest part people miss. -2 times -10 is +20. Okay? And then combine like terms. So I would have 25 minus 2x is greater than or equal to 13, and then it's just a normal problem, okay? So I would subtract 25, because 25 is positive. Subtract 25, I'm left with -12. So now I have -2x is greater than or equal to -12. Divide by a -2. When I divide by a negative, what happens with the sign? Yikes. It flips. Now look, that's what I'm talking about. I don't care if the answer is negative. This answer is positive. You still have to flip the sign because I divided by a negative. Okay? So pause it, make sure you graph it correctly with a closed circle to the left. Okay? So yes, you have a Canvas quiz, 6 questions. Get that done now, please.